You are listening to the Pregnancy Podcast with Vanessa Merton. Hello, thank you for tuning into the Pregnancy Podcast. In today's episode, we're talking about the top 5 reasons moms stop breastfeeding early. As a new mom, you go into breastfeeding with the best intentions. But unfortunately, a lot of moms run into issues that make breastfeeding feel difficult or even impossible. By 6 months, fewer than 1 in 3 babies is still exclusively breastfed. And researchers across many countries have examined why mothers supplement with formula or why they wean before their baby's first birthday. And the same themes come up again and again. This episode walks through the top 5 reasons that moms stop breastfeeding early, and importantly, what you can do to avoid these issues so that you can reach your own breastfeeding goals. You can find the full article and all of the resources for this episode at pregnancypodcast.com/stopbreastfeeding. Pregnancy comes with a never-ending list of questions. Pregnancy Podcast Premium gives you access to every episode with no ads in a private podcast feed that you can listen to in your favorite podcast app. That means that you can get evidence-based answers to all of your questions at your own pace whenever you need it. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/premium. VTech is the #1 baby monitor brand in North America and trusted by millions of families. If you want high-resolution video and to be able to see around the entire room, the VTech RM7968 has 4K video, a 7-inch parent unit, and 360-degree pan, tilt, and zoom. It's available at Target. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/VTech. From skincare to treating common pregnancy symptoms like stretch marks with clinically proven ingredients, 8 Sheep Organics has you covered. Every product comes with a 100-day happiness guarantee. Try it risk-free, and if you're not 100% happy with your purchase, simply send them an email and they'll get you a refund, no questions asked. Check out 8 Sheep Organics and save 10% when you go to pregnancypodcast.com/8sheep. The evidence in support of breastfeeding is overwhelming. Your milk contains every vitamin, mineral, and nutritional element that your baby needs. Infant formulas have massively improved over the years, but none come close to mimicking all of breast milk's beneficial properties. There are decades of documentation on the positive effects of breastfeeding on immunity, health, and the connection between a mother and a baby. Breast milk benefits your baby in the short and the long term. They're born without natural immunity, and breast milk helps build their immune system. Breast milk actually contains living cells that inhibit the growth of bacteria and viruses. Plus, it has antimicrobial proteins and peptides, along with anti-inflammatory and antioxidative factors. The microbiome in your milk even helps shape your baby's intestinal microbiome. Because all of this, breastfed babies are at a lower risk for ear infections, intestinal upsets, respiratory problems, and dental problems. There's also evidence that breastfed infants are less likely to be overweight and have a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Breastfeeding is even linked to higher scores on intelligence tests. A meta-analysis of 17 studies found that breastfed children scored about 3.4 IQ points higher on average. And that effect held up even after accounting for the mother's own IQ. There's also benefits for you. Exclusively breastfeeding can act as a form of birth control. If you're exclusively breastfeeding, so this means at least once at night, you most likely will not get your period for at least 6 months after your baby's born. Although this isn't quite reliable enough to depend on it by itself, so please be careful with that or talk to your care provider about the specifics before relying on this as a form of birth control. Breastfeeding also reduces your risk of breast and ovarian cancer, and it's associated with maternal responsiveness. The hormones that are released during breastfeeding, prolactin and oxytocin, help foster a connection to your baby and help you recover from birth. All of that said, I support the decisions that you make about feeding for you and your baby. If you want to breastfeed, then you should have accurate information and the support that you need to be successful. And that's what this episode is here to give you. There is a page on the website that has all of the Pregnancy Podcast breastfeeding resources. You can see that at pregnancypodcast.com/breastfeeding. One thing to get out of the way is what the recommendations are for breastfeeding. All health organizations largely agree on how long you should breastfeed. This includes the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Health Organization, pediatric associations around the world. They all recommend exclusively breastfeeding your baby for about the first 6 months. At that point, you introduce solid foods with continued breastfeeding for up to 2 years and beyond. I know right now 2 years sounds like a very long time. What you need to know is that any amount of time that your baby gets breast milk benefits them. And if you stop breastfeeding before your baby's first birthday, you will need to supplement with formula. Despite all of these recommendations, data shows that mothers do not exclusively breastfeed. In the United States, about 85% of babies are ever breastfed. The number of babies that are breastfed decreases to about 62% at 6 months, and about 40% are still receiving breast milk at 12 months. Now, these numbers also include mothers who were supplementing with formula, so the rates for exclusive breastfeeding are even lower. Just under 48% of babies are exclusively breastfed through 3 months. By 6 months, that number drops to about 28%. And we don't have data beyond that, but based on what we can see and that declining trend, we can expect those numbers to keep falling. Given all of the overwhelming evidence supporting breastfeeding, mothers go into this with the best intentions. And as we're going through this episode today, I do want to be very clear, you always have the choice to supplement or to stop breastfeeding for any reason at any time. With that, if your goal is to breastfeed, understanding the most common reasons that moms stop early is the best way to avoid them so that you can reach your breastfeeding goals and continue nursing as long as it's working for you and your baby. When you're looking across the research, the same 5 reasons come up again and again. Most mothers who do not reach their breastfeeding goals stop because they don't think they're making enough milk. They run into a problem like pain or difficulty latching. They lack support. They return to work, or they get pregnant again. Let's go through each of these and talk about what you can do to avoid it. The number one reason mothers do not meet their breastfeeding goals or that they supplement with formula is that they do not think they are making enough milk. In the scientific literature, researchers use the term perception of insufficient milk supply. If a mom believes that she is not producing enough, she will, of course, supplement or switch to formula. The key word here, though, is perception. Evidence shows that only about 5% of mothers experience actual milk insufficiency. And that number increases if mothers do not effectively establish breastfeeding in the first month. There's a few basics you need to know to protect your supply. The very first thing that you have to keep in mind is that your body makes milk based on how much you remove. So the single most important thing that you can do is feed your baby frequently. We're talking 8 to 12 or more times in a 24-hour period, especially over the first few weeks. You cannot judge your milk supply based on your breast size, how full your breasts fill, or how many ounces you pump. Instead, the most reliable signs are steady weight gain in your baby and output in their diapers. Because milk supply is the single biggest reason that moms stop early, there's a whole episode devoted to that. So if you're worried about your supply, you want to know exactly how to gauge it, or you're looking to increase it, I will link to the episode on how to increase your milk supply and keep it up. That episode goes very deep on establishing supply in the early weeks, how to tell true low supply apart from just perceived low supply, and the evidence on foods, herbs, and medications that you can use to increase it. The second reason that moms stop early is that they run into a breastfeeding problem. Your newborn is hardwired to breastfeed. They're born with instincts to help them latch right after birth. But despite that, breastfeeding doesn't always come naturally or go perfectly from the start. In reality, it can take a lot of practice and patience as you and your baby find rhythm with this. Many issues can come up in the first few days or even months down the road. Problems can show up in your breasts, like leaking, sore nipples, pain, vasospasms, blebs, plugged ducts, mastitis, engorgement. Then there's issues that can show up in your baby, like jaundice, tongue tie, yeast infection, thrush, food allergies or sensitivities, nursing strikes, cluster feeding. Any of these can make it very hard to keep going. But the good news is that there's a solution or a remedy for nearly every problem that comes up. Think of it this way. If there's a name for it, there's usually a way to fix it. The key is educating yourself ahead of time and having your resources lined up before you need them. First, educating yourself. When you understand the common issues ahead of time, that allows you to identify what's happening and know how to treat it instead of panicking in the moment. I've covered troubleshooting breastfeeding issues in depth on this podcast. I will link to that episode. That's a really great starting place for common symptoms and tips to resolve them. There's also a book that I highly recommend. It's called The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. This covers everything about breastfeeding, and it's really a wonderful reference guide that you will go back to again and again throughout your breastfeeding journey. Also, the Kelly Mom blog is an excellent online resource. They have detailed articles on nearly every issue and question that can come up with nursing. You may also consider professional resources. There's no online resource or book that's a substitute for the value that you can get from a lactation consultant. This may sound like an expensive thing to hire one, but you can often find this help for free. Hospitals should have a lactation consultant on staff. After your birth, before you go home, you can always request that they stop by to check your baby's latch, show you some alternative positions, help you troubleshoot any early signs of issues. If you have your baby at a birth center, they may have a lactation consultant or someone knowledgeable about breastfeeding. Midwives also tend to be well educated and can help you get breastfeeding established after you have your baby. Once you get home, consider a breastfeeding support group. This gives you access to expertise and encouragement. Plus, meeting other mothers that are going through the same challenges can really help boost your confidence and can help you feel supported. A wonderful starting point for this is La Leche League. This is a global organization with support groups in areas all over the world. The takeaway here is that you can mitigate or correct nearly any issue if you want to resolve it and continue breastfeeding. The key is not trying to power through it alone. Instead, you want to educate yourself, seek professional help from a lactation consultant, or attend a support group, and that will all help you fast track a fix rather than trying to power through it or letting it derail your breastfeeding. The third reason that moms stop breastfeeding early is a lack of support. From an evolutionary perspective, breastfeeding was critical for survival. And before infant formula existed, if a mother could not breastfeed, she had to find another woman who could. breastfeeding was not optional, it was a necessity. There's maybe nothing that's affected breastfeeding rates so much as a loss of support at the individual and community levels. It is far easier to maintain your breastfeeding relationship when you have people around you that support it. Your partner, family, friends, this is your first line of support. There's a lot of misconceptions about breastfeeding that shape people's opinions. In my own breastfeeding journey, I heard everything from you have to stop once your baby has teeth to breastfeeding will wreck your body. Because I had educated myself, I was confident and I knew that none of this was true. And that meant that when somebody gave me bad advice, I could counter it with facts and let it go. So what does support from the people that are close to you actually look like? It's not pushing formula when you have not asked for it or you don't want it. It's staying relaxed when you feed your baby in front of them rather than treating it as something that has to be hidden. And when the people around you are comfortable with your breastfeeding, it's a lot easier for you to be comfortable too. Dealing with a lack of support in your community or your workplace can be a little bit more challenging. If you're uncomfortable breastfeeding in public, you always have the option to find a private spot or use a cover or nursing clothing to feel more discreet about it. If you're pumping when you return to work, the key with your employer is hashing out all the details of how that's going to take place before you return. Bottom line here is that the people in your life are more likely to support you once you make it clear that this is a priority for you. And the more confident that you are about breastfeeding, the easier this becomes. Next, we're going to talk about 2 more reasons why moms stop breastfeeding early. Before we do that, I would like to thank the sponsors that have supported this episode. A lot of companies have exclusive discounts for pregnancy podcast listeners, and you can always see discounts and promo codes at pregnancypodcast.com/resources. A baby monitor is one of the things that you will rely on multiple times a day for years. And that makes it worth investing in a model that delivers clear video, solid night vision, and room coverage that actually reaches every corner. The VTech RM7968 video baby monitor is built for exactly that. It comes with 2 cameras. If you have 2 kids, you could potentially watch 2 rooms on a split screen, or you can get 2 angles in the same room. The cameras deliver 4K ultra high definition video to your phone, tablet, or the 7-inch color LCD parent unit with 360-degree pan, tilt, and zoom so you can see everything. Super night vision helps keep the view clear in low light. A touch adaptive multicolor nightlight automatically adjusts to the room. And a temperature sensor keeps track of the temperature in your baby's room right on your screen. You also get 2-way talk, soothing sounds, and lullabies, and free live remote access through your phone or tablet with no subscription fees. VTech is the #1 baby monitor brand in North America, and they're trusted by millions of families. The VTech RM7968 is available at Target. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/VTech. Let's get back to today's episode. Reason number 4 that many mothers stop breastfeeding or start supplementing is that they return to work and they're struggling to keep up with their baby's demand with pumping. If you plan to pump, you have to understand the breastfeeding pumping relationship. The most efficient way to remove milk is to breastfeed. A pump will not do as thorough a job as your baby, but a pump can still do a solid job, and this is what makes feeding possible when you're not with your baby. Remember, when you remove milk from your breast, you're essentially telling your body that this is a feeding, so keep producing this much milk at this time. As an example, if your baby gets a bottle of pumped milk at noon on Tuesday, ideally you're pumping around noon on Tuesday. This doesn't have to be exact, but keeping it close will protect your supply. A common routine for a 9 to 5 workday would be to breastfeed your baby in the morning before you go to work, pump mid-morning, at lunch, and mid-afternoon, and then breastfeed again once you're reunited with your baby after work. On days that you have off, you simply breastfeed as normal. What makes this work is preparation. Talk to your boss or your HR department before your maternity leave ends to let them know that you will need to pump during the day. This is a conversation that can feel a little bit awkward, but it doesn't have to be. You can keep it very simple and just say something like, I will be providing breast milk for my baby when I return, and I will need to pump a few times a day. This is not something that you are asking for permission for. This is something that you're letting them know so you can work together to work out the details. In the United States, employers are required to provide reasonable break time and a private space that is not a bathroom for pumping, but they are not required to pay you for that time. It's also a good idea to start building a small freezer stash a few weeks before you go back to work. This gives you a little bit of a reserve while you're settling into this new routine. Because skipping pumping sessions is the fastest way to lose your supply, you want to protect that pumping time the way you would protect any other work commitment. If you're in an office job, block out time on your calendar. And if that's not the case, if you're in a service position, retail, healthcare, or another setting, you may need to arrange coverage so that someone else can take care of anything you're responsible for while you step away. I'm not going to go into more specifics on pumping and building a stash here. Whether your goal is to pump occasionally, pump at work, or you're looking to build a serious freezer stash, there is an episode that covers everything you need to navigate that. The fifth reason why mothers stop breastfeeding is that they get pregnant again. Some moms that conceive while nursing decide to wean. Others feel that they have to stop because of the new pregnancy. Again, you always have the option to stop breastfeeding if you do not wish to continue. In most cases, you can keep nursing through a pregnancy if that is your goal. The most common concern is that nipple stimulation releases oxytocin, which could theoretically trigger contractions. A systematic review did not find a significant difference in premature births between mothers who breastfed during pregnancy and those who did not. So, for most healthy pregnancies, breastfeeding is considered safe to continue. There are a few things to expect if you are breastfeeding while you're pregnant with another baby. Pregnancy hormones can cause your milk supply to dip, and they can potentially change the taste of your milk. Sometimes that can lead an older baby to self-wean. Your nipples may feel more sensitive, and you may need extra calories and hydration to support both your nursing child and your pregnancy. If you have a history of preterm labor, if you're carrying multiples, if you have any complications, this is a conversation to have with your doctor or midwife. And it also helps to work with a doctor or midwife that supports your choice to breastfeed during your pregnancy. Kelly Mom has a few very helpful articles on breastfeeding while pregnant, including nursing all the way through tandem feeding 2 kids after your baby arrives. And I will link to that in the article for this episode. You always have the choice to supplement or stop breastfeeding at any time for any reason. And any amount of time that your baby gets breast milk will benefit them. And breast milk and formula are not mutually exclusive. You can supplement with formula and still continue to provide the benefits of breast milk at other feedings. The goal is to find the solution that's right for you and your baby. Whatever that looks like, I hope that the information in this episode helps you along the way. If and when you are ready to stop, that is a topic that I am covering next week on the podcast. There's a lot of information in the world about how to breastfeed and not a lot of good evidence-based information on how to stop. And remember, you can always find all of the breastfeeding resources from the Pregnancy Podcast at pregnancypodcast.com/breastfeeding. To recap today's episode, we talked about why breastfeeding is worth all of the effort, from the benefits to your baby to the benefits to you. I covered the current recommendations and where breastfeeding rates actually land in the real world. Then we covered the top 5 reasons that moms stop breastfeeding early. The number one reason is not making enough milk, or not thinking that you're making enough milk. Next, we talked about running into breastfeeding problems. Remember, if there's a name for it, then there is also a solution for it and a way to fix it. I covered the lack of support and how the people around you can really shape your experience. We covered returning to work, how to keep your supply up while pumping, and what happens if you're breastfeeding and you get pregnant again. I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Pregnancy Podcast today. I hope that you find this episode helpful. Please share the podcast if you have a friend that's pregnant. So many listeners find the podcast through recommendations, and I appreciate you sharing it. As always, you can reach me, Vanessa, at pregnancypodcast.com. You can read the full article and see all of the resources that accompany this episode at pregnancypodcast.com/stop breastfeeding. I've created a lot of episodes on breastfeeding that go into a pile of research and evidence and give you practical tips to reach your breastfeeding goals. Pregnancy Podcast Premium members get access to everything ad-free in the private feed in your favorite podcast app. Check it out at pregnancypodcast.com/premium.